As a result of the feud between Mr. McMahon and his fellow co-owner of the WWF, Ric Flair, alongside weeks of teasing, at WWE's No Way Out pay-per-view on the 17th of February 2002, the NWO invaded the WWE in the form of its three original members, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hollywood Hulk Hogan, the same group which took the wrestling world by storm in the late 90s and helped WCW to legitimately compete with the WWF during the Monday Night Wars. The group kicked off the show pandering to the crowd and to the rest of the roster by way of asking for a fresh start. However, later in the night, we saw their true colours. First of all, there was a tense confrontation between the group and Steve Austin, which was followed by another with The Rock, and then during the main event, Hogan, Hall and Nash all interfered in Austin's match with Chris Jericho and prevented him from winning the Undisputed Championship. Scott Hall went on to feud with Austin, which culminated in a match at WrestleMania, but a feud between Hogan and The Rock would begin the next night on Monday Night Raw. Hollywood came out to the ring to seemingly reminisce about the good old times in the 80s before asking why the fans turned on him and drove him out of the WWE. He promptly told the fans to kiss his ass and claimed that he made the WWF into what it was. There was no one who was a bigger icon than Hogan, no one who could sell out arenas like Hogan could, no one who could ever be greater than Hulk Hogan. Cue The Rock's music, who firstly refuted Hogan's accusations towards the fans and then asked him how he would feel about headlining WrestleMania one more time with The Rock. Hogan argued that The Rock was not on his level, but the Great One insisted on an answer, and used the fans' deafening reaction to try and persuade Hogan. Hogan finally replied with one simple word: yes. Before leaving the ring, Hogan wished The Rock good luck because he was going to need it, but The Rock kept hold of Hogan's hand and said, "Not as much as you, brother," before connecting with a big rock bottom. This prompted Hall and Nash to come out and deliver a vicious beatdown onto The Rock, and soon enough, Hogan joined in. The assault came to a brutal end when Hogan smashed The Rock over the back of the head with a hammer. Hogan then executed a leg drop, covered The Rock, and Scott Hall mockingly counted for the free. The Rock was loaded into an ambulance, but before it could leave the arena, the NWO ambushed the vehicle and its medical staff. The trio were not finished with The Rock just yet. Hogan got into a truck and proceeded to drive it straight into the ambulance. Talk about making a statement. The Rock was kept off television for the next couple of weeks to sell his injuries, whilst the NWO gloated over their heinous actions and continued to terrorise Raw and SmackDown. But on the March 7th edition of SmackDown, the Great One returned. The Rock called Hogan out and dared him to try and finish the job he started 2 weeks ago. Of course, Hogan denied him, but a match was arranged instead for the evening's main event, The Rock vs Scott Hall. Obviously, before the match could finish, Nash and Hogan interfered to beat down The Rock. However, before things could get any worse, an unlikely ally joined the fray to clear house alongside The Rock, none other than Stone Cold Steve Austin. And before the show ended, Mr. McMahon appeared to announce a monumental match for the go-home Raw before WrestleMania: Austin and The Rock versus the NWO in a handicap match. The Rock and Austin fought valiantly, but unfortunately the numbers game caught up to them, and Hogan picked up the big win for his team with a big boot followed by a leg drop over his WrestleMania opponent, no less. Now boasting a pinfall victory over The Rock, Hogan was supremely confident heading into one of the most epic encounters ever booked for the grandest stage of them all. An encounter which was appropriately billed as Icon versus Icon. What's up, wrestling fans? My name is Aaron and this is Wrestling by Waldridge, and welcome to the final chapter for Season 1 of Under Analysis, Chapter 10, where in today's video I will be looking at the match between Hollywood Hulk Hogan and The Rock from WrestleMania 18. If you're new here, welcome to the channel, and if you're returning, it's bloody great to see you again. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel, please hit that thumbs up button, give it a share across social media, and hit the notification bell to be notified when I release new videos on the channel. I've got some new exciting ideas coming up on the channel, so make sure you stay tuned. Hollywood Hulk Hogan comes out to the ring first to the NWO's theme music, and then The Rock follows him. Immediately there is a massive dueling chant for both wrestlers, as The Rock and Hogan stand either side of the ring just staring at each other. The crowd is getting louder and louder as both competitors slowly walk towards each other. The Rock looks to his right, Hogan does the same, acknowledging the crowd's thunderous reactions. They then look to their left before meeting back in the middle. Trash talking commences. Both men back away and then begin to circle each other whilst firing up the crowd. What an incredible opening sequence. This was very clever. Talk about milking the fans' anticipation. There hasn't even been a move or a punch thrown yet, and the atmosphere is absolutely electric. The two icons collide in a collar and elbow tie-up. There's a brief struggle, but it doesn't last long as Hogan uses his superior strength advantage to shove The Rock down onto the mat. The Hulkster then shows The Rock the power of his pythons, which earns a huge cheer from the crowd. Hogan then mocks The Rock with his own "just bring it" taunt. We then see another lockup and Hogan transitions into a side headlock. The Rock sends Hogan into the ropes, but he's met with a big shoulder tackle. More classic Hogan taunts and the crowd bloody loves it. The Rock's facial work is fantastic as well. He has definitely underestimated Hogan here, and he also looks very surprised by the crowd's mixed reaction. Hogan nails The Rock with more heavy blows before landing with a clothesline. Hogan goes for another clothesline, but this time The Rock avoids it and then hits Hogan with a running forearm. The Rock gets right in Hogan's face and tells him to just bring it. This whole opening segment has been a fantastic game of mental one-upsmanship. In my eyes, it's one of the best examples of how to work a crowd. The Rock counters a right shot from Hogan with his patented punching combination. Hogan attempts to bump over the top rope, but he's unable to, so he rolls underneath the bottom rope. A good recovery from Hogan, as it could have looked a lot worse. The Rock rolls Hogan back into the ring, uses an Irish whip, and then follows up with a clothesline, as we now hear a smattering of boos among the mixed reaction. The Rock goes for a rock bottom, but Hogan escapes it with a stiff elbow strike to the back of the head, much to the delight of the fans. Hogan knocks The Rock down with hard right shots, and then nails him with a running elbow. The Hulkster then hits consecutive elbow drops to The Rock's chest before he rakes at his face with his boot. A nice little heel maneuver there by Hogan, even though he's mostly being cheered by the crowd. I think it's also worth mentioning how great the selling has been thus far. The Rock and Hogan have both registered well and have made each other's offense look very effective, especially The Rock. Hogan's punching has looked particularly powerful because of The Rock's selling. Hogan then enjoys a spell of dominance until The Rock eventually counters an Irish whip into a Luthez press, which was unfortunately poorly executed. However, Hogan quickly regains control with a back suplex after avoiding a right shot. Hogan covers, but The Rock kicks out at 2. Hogan then applies an abdominal stretch whilst laying in some clubbing blows to The Rock's torso. In my opinion, it's not the best choice of move, because whilst it is a great move for a heel to use against a babyface, when you consider how the crowd have been reacting to both performers, I think it's unlikely that the crowd were going to get behind The Rock. Hogan noticed this and quickly transitioned into a schoolboy cover for a close 2 count. Hogan brings The Rock over to the corner and rakes at his back multiple times. He then hits him with a combination of chops and punches. Hogan climbs onto the middle rope and then throws 3 shots at The Rock's head before he stops the crowd's count. Hogan then bites at The Rock's forehead. Lots of heel maneuvers used by Hogan in quick succession, which the fans just loved. The Rock is briefly able to turn the tables with some knife-edge chops, but Hogan stops him in his tracks with a choke slam? Okay, sure. Hogan then continues to heel it up by choking at The Rock with his wrist tape. The Rock fights back again, but Hogan responds by launching The Rock over the top rope. Hogan beats his opponent down some more on the outside and then begins to dismantle the announce table. But this allows The Rock to recover to mount another comeback. He slams Hogan's head onto the announce table and then grabs a steel chair, which may not have made the most sense considering his portrayal as the babyface, but it's a very clever response to the crowd's unfavourable reaction towards him. Chioda yanks the chair away from The Rock, and off the back of the distraction, Hogan nails The Rock with a clothesline. He rolls him back into the ring, Irish whips The Rock, who looks to counter with a clothesline, but Hogan avoids it, which sends The Rock into the referee instead. Hogan then attempts another Irish whip, but it's reversed again into a spine buster, and then the Great One follows up with a sharpshooter. Hogan is able to get to the bottom rope, but there isn't a referee conscious enough to break the hold, so The Rock drags Hogan back to the centre of the ring to reapply the submission. Hogan taps out, but again there is no one there to call for the bell. The Rock breaks the hold and turns his back on Hogan to try and wake up Chioda, but it's to no avail. He turns back around straight into a low blow, and then Hogan follows up with a rock bottom, which got a massive pop from the fans. Hogan covers, but The Rock gets his shoulder up. That was a brilliant near fall. Hogan then unstraps his belt and repeatedly wails away at The Rock's back. Hogan wraps the belt up around his fist, throws a punch at The Rock, but The Rock avoids it and hits Hogan with a DDT. The Rock picks up the belt, and then it's his turn to dish out some punishment onto Hogan's back. The Rock follows up with the second rock bottom of this match. 1, 2, Hogan kicks out and begins to Hulk up. The Sky Dome absolutely erupts as Hogan points at The Rock and then wags his finger. The Rock's expression is priceless. He throws a punch, but Hogan blocks it. I think you know where this is going. He lands 3 of his own, Irish whip, a big boot, which is followed by the leg drop. 1, 2, The Rock kicks out. This match has suddenly kicked into 7th gear as everyone is just going mental. Hogan connects with another big boot and then looks for another leg drop, but The Rock rolls out of the way. Hogan slowly gets back to his feet, but The Rock is already waiting to hit his second rock bottom. The Rock does not go for the cover. Instead, he drags Hogan to his feet and then connects with a third rock bottom. Great psychology by The Rock, as it shows that he's definitely done his homework on Hogan. He heavily suspects that Hogan would have been able to kick out, so he uses a second rock bottom in succession. The Rock kips up on his feet and then nails Hogan with the People's Elbow. 1, 2, 3. The Rock defeats Hogan. After the match, the pair shook hands to show their respect, and then The Rock made his way up to the back. But before Hogan could follow him, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash came out to the ring to confront Hogan and ultimately turn on him. But The Rock came back out to the ring, cleared house alongside Hogan, and then persuaded him to appease the fans and play the greatest hits. It was a very cool moment to see the Hulkster back in his truest form at the grandest stage of them all, standing beside the most electrifying man in sports entertainment. Whilst I don't think this is one of the best matches of all time, I definitely think it's one of the most iconic matches of all time. The match told a great story of a battle between 2 completely different generations. I loved the mind games at the beginning, where Hogan was able to display his strength advantage over The Rock. As I mentioned before, The Rock did misjudge Hogan to begin with, and I thought his facial expressions did an excellent job to convey this. The Rock's facial work was on point for the entire match. However, when The Rock was finally able to find his groove, his superior speed and athleticism proved to be a problem for the Hulkster, so Hogan responded by resorting to underhanded tactics to stay 1 step ahead of The Rock at all times. Now, the reason I gave the story a 4 instead of a 5 is because I do think it did become a little inconsistent towards the end of the match. I am a little conflicted because whilst I do think Hogan's Hulk Up was a good decision when you consider the crowd's reaction to it, it did seem like a very sudden babyface turn for someone who had been relying on underhanded tactics for the whole match. Perhaps if we saw a little more conflict in Hogan's expressions and his actions, for instance before he uses the belt on The Rock, if we saw more of a gradual face turn to conform with the fans' reaction, for me it would have made the overall story just that little more coherent. We did see The Rock attune to the crowd's reaction a little more when he grabbed the steel chair, so there even could have been some sort of impromptu double turn, but it's certainly a tough one because at the end of the day the fans were just super into Hogan regardless of his actions. As for the psychology, again I thought it was great. I've already said how good I thought the selling was. Every manoeuvre and every punch thrown was very well registered. I loved the psychology in the finish, and I thought Hogan's use of classic heel psychology really helped to move the story along for the duration of the match. However, in between all of Hogan's cheap manoeuvres and The Rock's comebacks, I thought there was a lack of meaning behind most everything else. There was a slight overabundance in the striking and the Irish whips, where it kind of seemed like both competitors were spinning their wheels up until the next spot, and this went hand in hand with a work rate which, let's be honest, wasn't the best. I do think the action lacked imagination, but to be fair, Hogan was 48 years old at the time, so I definitely wasn't expecting some technical masterpiece. I mean, he executed the rock bottom better than The Rock did, so that's got to count for something, right? There were a couple moments of miscommunication, but most of the other manoeuvres were performed to a good standard. But yeah, the work rate was just okay for me. On the other hand, the excitement in this match was on a whole new level. From the second both performers entered the ring to the moment The Rock picked up the victory, the crowd were absolutely on fire. When you think about it, it isn't actually a huge surprise that the fans were so into Hogan. After all, it had been 9 long years since his last WrestleMania appearance, so it was a very big deal to a lot of people who probably grew up watching Hogan. All of the big moments received a thunderous reaction, and I thought all of the near falls towards the end of the match really helped it become less predictable. I honestly can't speak highly enough of how much the crowd meant to this match. If you watched it without volume, I guarantee that people would have a different opinion about this match. I also thought the contest had a very solid structure to it. It started off strongly with back and forth mind games. This led into the period of control for Hogan, which was peppered by The Rock's comeback spots. It also established the principal story of the match, and then we saw the dramatic climax, which featured both men hitting their signature maneuvers to try and claim the victory. Loved the finish. Hogan's Hulk Up was such an awesome moment which exuded nostalgia. I've already touched upon why I liked The Rock hitting 2 rock bottoms before the People's Elbow, and similar to the previous match I reviewed, I thought this one was also moderately paced, which helped to keep the crowd invested, and I thought 16 minutes and 23 seconds was the perfect amount of time. Any longer, and I do think that Hogan's shortcomings might have been more exposed. Any shorter, and I don't think the story could have been told as effectively. Dave Meltzer gave this match 3 stars, which I think is a little bit harsh. I think I would give it either a 3.75 or a 4-star rating. But as always guys, let me know what rating you would give this match in the comment section down below. Please also let me know if you enjoyed this video, and if you've enjoyed Under Analysis. I've had so much fun making this series. I've received some really nice praise for it, which is always great. And yeah, just thank you so much guys. Please remember to hit that subscribe button. You know you can follow me on Twitter at WrestlingByW and the same handle for Instagram. Give the video a share, rock bottom that like button, and leg drop the notification bell to be notified when I release new videos on the channel. I hope you will have great days guys, and I shall see you all for the next one. Bye bye.